Attribution theory. I promise you, I will ask you about attribution theory. Attribution theory was brought out in the late 60s by Kelly. And as I mentioned earlier today, it has to do with to what do we assign the cause of success or failure, both with ourselves and with other people. And, there we go. So there's two major types of attributions we want to think about right away. In an external attribution, we are saying that the cause of behavior is due to the situation or the environment. Situation or the environment. In internal attributions, we assign cause to traits, character. So, my mother is great about the internal attributions. And I bet you guys have heard these kind of things from people in your family. My mother has this theory as an amateur psychologist that things are traits. Well, actually, streaks is what she would call them. So every time this family down the road gets involved with law enforcement, she attributes it to a streak in that family. There's a streak in that family. There might be a mean streak, a drunken streak, a trashy streak, but everything's a streak. That's her form of genetics. That's internal attribution. She's saying that it's trait related, it's characteristics. The other side of that would be saying that there's something in the environment that's causing a person to behave in a certain way. They just got lucky. The test was easy. The police weren't paying attention. What have you. There's all these possibilities of external and internal attributions. Now, what becomes interesting is how these start interacting with each other. And one of the big ideas of the semester is fundamental attribution error. And what fundamental attribution error is when we evaluate others, the tendency to overestimate internal causes and to underestimate external causes. One more time. Oh, repeat the definitions, yeah. When evaluating others, the tendency to overestimate internal causes and to underestimate external causes. So if my neighbor were to save a baby from a burning building, I would, if I was making fundamental attribution error, maybe say something like, well, that's really not all that impressive. They were probably just doing it to get on TV. You know, it's so kind of offsetting a little bit. An example that might be easier is if you're looking at someone else and they do very well on an exam, you might say, well, it's not because they're smart or that they studied that much. It's because the test was real easy. Now we do that a lot, but here's the really fascinating little bit of all this. When it's our behavior, we have an inversion. we tend, as a general rule, to overestimate the external and to minimize the internal. So if I take a test that I flunk, it's not because I didn't study. It's not because I'm not so bright. It's because the test was too hard. The test was bad, or my neighbors kept me up, or things of that nature. So we kind of have this inversion of reasoning when we assign attributions, other our own or our people we observe. And we have names for this. One is actor-observer bias. So in actor-observer bias, we're attributing our own behavior to external sources. And then there's a self-serving bias. Where we have a tendency to use internal attribution for positive outcomes and external attributions for negative outcomes. So we're never to blame. So let me repeat that. Self-serving bias is the tendency to use internal attributions for positive outcomes or outcomes that we like, and external attributions for negative incomes or those that we do not like. Are you studying during my class? I see neurons. That looks encouraging. What are we studying? Anatomy? So, let me see this. Ooh, polypeptide. Those aren't neurons. Those are these are. Well, that's still biology. I'll let it go. Oh, that is a neuron down there. What? My diagrams are better. Wow. Who teaches that? Andrews? Don't think I know her. All right. Studying in class. Have I embarrassed you? Good. I was going to keep going. I have a check mark. I have to get at least one person in every class. Cognitive dissonance. This is the last thing I want to talk about today. Festinger and Carl Smith, 1959. This is a fantastic study. Your book talks about it. They diagram this out a little bit differently. I think even though the diagram that your book has looks more dramatic, I think mine's probably more accurate. So, cognitive dissonance has to do with when there's a difference between beliefs that you hold at the same time, or your beliefs and your behaviors that you hold at the same time. And the idea is, if you are holding incompatible beliefs, or you behave in a way that's incompatible with your beliefs, that this is going to create dissonance, a pressure that will eventually cause you to either change your behavior or change your beliefs. Now, this idea has been very influential in psychology. You still hear about it today. It's a difficult concept to test. It's hard to work with. But this is certainly a seminal study. Uh-oh. That looks handy. All right. This is going to get real ugly for just a second, but then it'll be only moderately ugly after that. We can fix this. I know, just calm down. Come on. When I accidentally hit my pen, it puts a mark on the page, and the software seems to think that it's supposed to be a big dot. Hmm? There. We got there, finally. So let me put us back together. I think his computer's kind of flaking out too. No, it's supposed to do that. Just calm down. Uh-oh. There we go. All right, so in this study, subjects were brought into the lab, and they were given just a mind-numbingly boring task to do. And in one version of this, they were given thimbles of thread, and they were given different ways to organize them. So organize them by color, organize them by size. And just boring. And then they were offered either no money, $1, or $20 to tell the next subject that the experiment was interesting and enjoyable. So those are our three groups: no money, $1, $20 to tell the next subject how fun the thing was. So they're being asked to lie. Then they were asked to fill out how enjoyable it was. And here's, boys, this whole page has issues. This should say level of enjoyment or something similar to that. Those who were not asked to lie rated how enjoyable the activity was at that level. So here's your baseline. Now you might think that those who got $20, and this is back in the 50s, no, it was 1960. So if you're talking about $20 in the 60s, gosh, I don't know, it'd be at least like getting a 50 today. All right. Your memory's better than mine. It's a lot of money. You would think that somebody getting paid a lot to lie would feel better about it than those getting paid a trivial amount to lie. It turns out that's not the case at all. Those who got $1 to lie rated the experience as being better than those who received no money whatsoever. All right, so here's that difference. And those who were paid to lie but got all that money rated it barely higher than those who were not asked to. Weird. So why is this? Well, the idea is cognitive dissonance. apparently the more you're paid to lie, the worse you feel about it. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But you know you're lying, you know you're being deceitful, and it's moving it out of the category of like a little white lie to a whopper. So you might imagine the difference between, you would probably feel bad about just misleading your friends a little bit or just completely lying to them. What, you wouldn't? No. All right. So cognitive dissonance, and the idea is that, again, getting back to the idea of changes, is if you can juxtapose two very different conflicting ideas, you should be able to create one thing will change or the other. So either, in this case, you would quit taking large amounts of money to lie to the next subject, or you would quit lying to the next subject, would kind of be the outcome expected.